I'm Stacey R. Wexler. I do figurative sculpture, mixed media construction. Right now, the focus is ceramics. I basically have been doing art ever since I can remember. I kind of like popped out of the womb with a crayon in my hand. I was always drawing and making things when I was a little kid. In fact, I got into trouble with my mom because she was very frugal and didn't want me to use too much paper and stuff. And I was always just drawing and just making things and ran out of paper. And the wallpaper in my bedroom had lifted just a little bit. So I lifted it more and started drawing under the wallpaper.
Behind the wallpaper?
Yeah.
That's great.
So I wouldn't get into trouble drawing on the walls. And my mom unfortunately discovered it because she noticed, the wallpaper was kind of curled, and she peeled it up and sees all this drawing, and she was livid. My father thought it was pretty funny actually, but he eventually admonished me don't draw on the walls. And then he turned to my mom and said, give her more paper. I had always said that I was going to grow up to be a famous artist, like Picasso or Van Gogh or so. And went off to art school, got my bachelor's of fine arts in ceramics at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia, and went on and got my master's degree fine arts at Claremont Graduate University out here in Claremont, California, in ceramic sculpture. I actually went and did a lot of work for the film and entertainment industry. So I worked on big films like Batman Returns
Oh,
and
wow.
Pee-wee's Playhouse. And during the 9/11 attacks, I decided that there's more to life than just making money. I wanted to give back. So I went and looked for a job in teaching. And I started doing tutoring for individuals, and then worked into getting a part-time position at Los Angeles City College. And then I got a couple of other gigs.
Yeah, that's great. Is it in ceramics and or 3D artwork?
I would say my main focus has always been the 3D arts, but I've always been very active in drawing. When I was in college, my professor, Bill Daly, was very avid about you should know how to draw. You should be able to conceptualize your ideas on paper first. It's really kind of more efficient to really kind of delve in and develop your ideas on paper. So I actually bring that to my students, telling them you need to generate a lot of ideas. You have to try things out because not everything is going to work. I'm always challenging my students to keep an open mind in terms of getting more ideas than just their first one.
If somebody were to be interested in sculpture and ceramics, how would you sort of encourage them to start exploring that?
First, start small and start getting bigger. Set the pace in terms of making small successes. A lot of times I do smaller pieces just so I can experiment. That piece, Unhinged Pin, started out as a couple of cardboard maquettes. And I had a very definite idea. I had done some sketching of the actual incident that took place. I had a different version of the top of the woman. The top of the woman was actually the woman very two-sided, and I thought it was very static. And the piece sat in my loft for a good month as I was contemplating what to do with the top of the piece because it just didn't look right. And I decided that it needed to be really fluid and sculpted and just kind of big and overblown to really get that emotion out.
That's been one thing that it feels a lot of your pieces do show is a lot of emotion in them. How has sort of your past and your career path influenced your ability to impart that emotion, but also allow for some discovery from the viewer?
So my work involves a lot of storytelling. And so even if the story isn't that evident, that's how it begins. And I just always have loved storytelling and stories and myths and legends. So that always kind of finds a vein through my work at times. Getting the emotion to come out takes some practice. The pieces that I did, I would say a long time ago, look more like the Greek sculptures that are very stoic. A lot of the emotion came from seeing more art like German Expressionism. I just wanted to bring more of that motive element into my work.
I saw with some of your recent work that was for the, was it the Manhattan Beach ceramic showcase, the
Mhm.
Architecture of Touch? You sort of play around with the bust, I guess, motif some. So, how would you sort of say that you've decided to incorporate some? It looks like some of the pieces come from animation, almost like cartoon animation or sort of mascot styles.
I'm actually appropriating imagery from my childhood in terms of toys I used to play with, like, well, now it's called Potato Head, but Mr. Potato Head, Mrs. Potato Head, the Potato Head family, Colorform. So all those different things I'm kind of grabbing from all those things, the imagery. And being that I have this ongoing love of myths and legends with Greek myths and legends, and the Greeks had this very kind of idealized concept of what men were and what women were and what beauty was. And I really want to kind of twist that around.
I have a quote here from you. I believe this is from your website. Often I depend upon materials to evoke an emotional response, with my strategy being to tempt the viewer with a glimpse of humor, play, or interaction. But a darker note frequently accompanies this attraction. So, could you share with us some sort of how the process also brings about some aspect of storytelling?
So I believe that materials bring their own story. They have their own content. Um, I am working with clay primarily, but clay has a rich history and it has an association to it. If you use earthenware, earthenware was really kind of the low class. It was considered really kind of just stuff you use for making tiles or pottery for your garden stuff. It had a very low status to it. And porcelain is very high elevated, from China, and it's like has a rich history. And it was very also very snobbish. So I enjoy trying to combine those two aspects of, the snobbery with the kind of funky, low class uh, parts.
So, this is a little bit of a different angle. We've spent probably, or now definitely over a year during the pandemic and not really being able to be, physically close with many other people. Has that impacted your approach to ceramics that's a very physical medium?
Yeah, it definitely, what was happening out there definitely had an effect of what was happening up here. What I had been thinking about suddenly just got shelved, and all these other um, more playful pieces started to emerge. I think I was doing the more playful aspect to kind of bring myself, lighten myself up a bit. Whenever things are getting more messed up out there, I want to kind of push towards the lighter side because there's enough heavy out there. I don't think I need to add to that. I'd rather bring people and elevate them back up again.
Have you had a similar shift across your entire career, such as like the one that happened this past year, going from having an idea of some maybe heavier emotional pieces to more playful to lift people up?
So yeah, when I was in college, the main focus was how am I going to make a living? Because I actually started with graphic design. Thank God that got shelved. Um, but yeah, when I went and got my degree in ceramics, it was the main focus was still how am I going to make a living from this? And I'm glad my shift away from always worrying about how to make money and just what's the message became really a bigger thing for me. So I'm not concerned with what is this piece going to sell for? Is this piece going to sell? I just get really kind of focused on what am I saying with this work? That actually made me grow more.
Would you say that there was a piece of advice that you heard from somebody, something that you really held on to that helped you grow or, grow some confidence or something like that?
You just have to be authentic. You really have to enjoy what you're doing and really kind of be there for your work. Because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, really kind of bringing yourself to it, yeah, your audience is not going to enjoy it either. They're going to see right through and go, oh, well, this is like so-and-so's work.
So finally, if somebody were to come to one of your shows or see some of your work and it was the first art show that they had been to or exhibit, how might you describe to them what you're doing with your pieces, sort of the overall story?
Gosh, that's a hard question. I would say the overall story has always been about kind of the journey, my journey as well as the art piece journey. Because the pieces start out as one thing and may twist and turn and develop over time. So yeah, I would say the overall theme is about just the journey that both myself and the piece are taking.
Is there somewhere else that we can also find out more about your work, or where you'll be if you're showing?
I'm in the process of updating my website right now, so
Okay.
stay tuned.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you for inviting me for this.